Hello and welcome to the Bcamp podcast. I am Richard Carey, the host, and today we have with us Carter Sheppard, who is the Vice President of Technology and Strategy at BC Stone Homes. So thank you for joining us today, Carter.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Richard.
And
Looking forward to talking today. I know we've known each other for a little while here and crossed worlds, have some overlap, so it should be a fun discussion.
yeah, I'm excited. We both have a similar background in BI and working at Domo, and yeah, it'll be a fun discussion. And to start out, maybe tell us a little bit about BC Stone Home.
Yeah. So BC Stone Homes is a mid-market enterprise. Our headquarters is in Auburn, Alabama. We currently cover about 20 counties across Alabama and Georgia where we build homes. And we offer the opportunity to build on your land or ours. And so what that means is customers come to us that already own land and they want our help, navigating the process of permitting, clearing and grading, the site work, building the house, and eventually, of course, turning it over on land that they already own. And then we also have land that we own that you can purchase from us and build on. And we also have move-in ready homes. So we kind of have three different ways we work with customers. Again, both on their land or on our land.
Yeah.
And my role at BC Stone Homes is focused around process optimization and scalability on the technology team. And then I also currently manage the marketing team. So I like to joke that I am responsible for building scalable systems and then making sure that we need to scale. And that the scalability is actually worth building. So
That's
that's a little
amazing.
bit about my current role.
I love that. And one of the things that struck me in learning a little bit about BC Stone Homes is, it's pretty traditional industry. People have been building homes for a long time, and I love it that you guys are so cutting edge on the technology side in a
Yeah.
traditional industry, and you guys have a development team, and you have a really good handle on your data, which is pretty unique, especially in a traditional industry. So maybe tell me a little bit about that. Like, where did that come from? And
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So, the credit really all goes back to our founder, Brian Stone. So I can talk a little bit about Brian. Brian is a successful, I would say, serial entrepreneur. He's got multiple businesses and successful exits under his belt. And a big part of his vision and philosophy is to be technology enabled. He loves technology, he loves systems, and he's willing to take the risk and invest in that in traditional industries where other people, they prefer the short-term win of keeping maybe profits higher this year, and they don't realize the optimization and the way that optimization can hit the bottom line in the long term. But I think Brian has a vision for that, and that's what really enables us to be uniquely positioned in the market, right? Is the investment that he's willing to make into the technology team. And I think it's exciting because, we like to joke around here. Building technology and construction is hard because it's a very complicated industry. There's tons and tons of requirements that you have to gather in order to define or to scope a custom home. But the flip side of that is it doesn't change very often. So if you do build a winning solution, it will last. And that's kind of the philosophy we have around here. We try to build quality, lasting solutions in the space.
yeah, I love that. Love that. And talk to us a little bit about how you ended up at BC Stone Homes, maybe about your journey before that. Just what's
Yeah.
your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I actually, I'll kind of talk through how I got to BC Stone, so I'll go like backwards and then maybe switch directions here at some point. But I joined BC Stone Homes when BC Stone started to work on their data strategy. At the time, I was a consulting partner with Domo. I think that if my timeline is right, Richard, you were working on Domo's product team probably at that time. So I was a Domo strategic partner, working with BC Stone to implement Domo, and Brian and I got along well during that project. We saw eye to eye, and he appreciated, I think, the sense of urgency that I had. I was always somebody who, said like, hey, if I could do it and give it to you fast, I'll do it and give it to you fast. And I think he kind of had a similar spirit. He liked to go fast, and so we kind of got together and to some degree we said, hey, while all these other people are doing QA, we could really get ahead. And we said, let's go fast, let's break things, and let's build a tech stack in the construction space that other people, can't compete with. Let's build this and optimize the business. And so that's kind of the journey we're on now. And I guess to kind of my background prior to that, to give some context, I was consulting for data strategy, but how I got into data strategy, I actually studied chemical engineering originally. I was a pre-med chemical engineering student. Figured out med school wasn't for me. I think a lot of people do that at some point during their college journey, and I was still interested in the space, and I went to work for actually a company called Pharmaceutical Product Development on a team called Special Project Implementations. And so what they did is they did the change management when the enterprise was going to choose it to move from one system to another for any given process. And so on that team, I was an intern, and one summer they basically said, like, we want you to be the person who uses Excel to like get all the data from the two different systems that we're in the middle of changing in between and get it all into like one Excel sheet that we can use and make a report. And I think that was my like big project for my 10-week internship, and I think I finished it in like 3 weeks. And that was when everybody was like, hey, this kid might be good at data stuff. And I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm interested or not, but what else do you want me to do? And the rest is pretty much history. I went back for a second internship, worked on the data side of things, and then I went and joined their team full time, same team after school, and that was kind of the perfect background. The change management aspect of that was the perfect background for me to then go into a consulting role that was doing system implementation in the data and analytics space. And so that's kind of the full circle of my background and how I ended up here.
Very cool. I love that. So let's talk about data. So
yeah,
I'm curious to hear, Carter, what's some of your favorite data to look at?
Yeah. So there's lots of data that we love. One of the thing, so there's like two categories of data. I'm going to spend more time talking about the second, but the first category I will say that I love is real-time sales data. I've never worked in sales, so I can't claim to really know what it's like. But even having never worked in a sales role or a commission-based role, I am a junkie and get the sales high when we have sales. And I'm getting notifications on my phone that are like, ding, 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 sale, like contract just came through, deal done, deal closed. Like, I love real-time sales data. That probably is what gets me the most excited, to be candid, is that notification, that hit of dopamine that's like, somebody just signed a contract and the whole business is moving forward. But the second data that I really love and that we spend a lot more time with, especially now, is what I would broadly define as like contextual data. And particularly contextual data in the sense of AI. So the data that we can harvest and pull together quickly and easily that allows us to take a regular AI model and enable it to provide better, more specific advice to our business and to our employees. So a classic, like a use case of this that we use on the tech team, I can give an example of is in our HubSpot instance. We use HubSpot for our CRM, and it's really, really built out. I mean, we've got hundreds of different use cases where we have to use custom code that's not out of the box. And so one of the things that we did as AI really got better is we went and, although you wouldn't traditionally manage this type of code in like a GitLab repository, we took the manual effort to go through and basically copy and paste all of our custom code tiles into a GitLab repo. And what that enabled us to do, though, is it enabled us to leverage our agents and our large language models on Cursor with tenfold the efficiency that they had prior to having all of that context. Things that, earlier this week, for example, we had an integration that we needed to make that probably would have taken, no AI, maybe it wasn't a huge lift, but maybe 2 to 4 hours, right, to set it up, test it, dig up your old formula, your old functions from old files and try and remember which one that was in and all that stuff. But using an agent, we're able to crank through these types of tasks in 10 to 15 minutes now. We can provide it the context and, a little bit of prompt engineering, for example, saying like, anywhere that you can reuse one of my past functions, do not create a new one. So that small bit of prompt engineering allows the readability for us as we check the code that it produces to be significantly increased, because we see the function and we know that's ours, that we wrote it in the past, and we recognize it, and we're able to say, okay, trust that, move forward. So it allows us to troubleshoot really quickly. And could it accomplish this without that? Yeah, likely it could. But by providing that custom code, and then the second piece of context, I guess I skipped when I got ahead of myself, is second piece of context we provide is just our schema. It's really easy in HubSpot to export all your objects and properties. So we provided our schema and all of our functions, and we say, then we can talk to it in pretty much plain English and say, hey, I need you to pull this association from there. Then once you get that ID, do another pull for the next layer of associations. Then do one more pull for a layer of associations. Then copy that property back to the original object for the workflow that we're in, for example. And so you can't do that with the low-code options, but it's not extremely complex. You're really using only a couple of functions, right? Like get associations and update properties. It's two different API calls, but you're just cycling through those two things. And when you provide the context of those functions, then really all you're reading is just your main export function for that automation, and you're just saying, okay, well, how am I doing my loop, or how am I doing my sequential steps? And that's all you have to check. You don't have to worry about checking authentication, or you don't have to worry about checking your API fundamental call setup. You don't have to worry about, for example, we have to do rate limiting and throttling in HubSpot to prevent API call limit issues, right? So you don't have to worry about any of that setup or digging up any of those old things. It's already got that context within it, and it really enables us to move much faster.
Wow, that's cool. I'd love to hear about the nitty-gritty details of this at some point, because that is a cool use case. And it makes me think, like, another question is, where else are you thinking about using AI agents? Everybody's talking about this. It's cliche, so we're just going to jump in and talk about it as well for a little bit, because there's some opportunity here, I think.
No, I completely agree. And I think, there's the world of AI agents is the wild, wild west now. And I think the word even AI agents is really poorly defined. It's this massive gray cloud of smoke. And nobody, like I was talking with someone the other day who was saying, well, I think that, workflows with clearly integrated steps for AI are the way to go. And I said, well, what's the difference between that and an agent? And are you sure that that's the definition? Or is a workflow with clearly integrated steps for a large language model is an AI agent? Like, right. Where do you draw the line? It's really poorly defined. So, for me, kind of like, I personally take a step back a little bit and say, like, let's avoid the I try to avoid the lack of clarity that has to come with like a word like an AI agent, right? So we do two things, right? We have large language models that operate in a chat bot that have additional context. That's one thing. And then we have automations that are AI enabled. That's another thing. Mm-hmm. So for our chat, right now we just use OpenAI. We evaluated several options, but we determined that just OpenAI's custom GPTs, honestly, pretty solid. So that's what we use for like any business facing, I would say, like chat stuff. So for example, one that we're working through that's not launched yet is a bot that can help someone choose their floor plan. So we have 250 floor plans. And as we scale the business, one of the things that really takes a lot of time is our sales reps really familiarizing themselves with the plan library and really being able to just off the top of their head for somebody to come in and say, look, this is my price point. I'm looking for 3 bedrooms, this many square feet, and I really want a wraparound porch. Well, it takes some time really for our sales reps to really learn that and be able to just fire that off in an instant. And as a business, as we scale, we wanted to be able to decrease the timeline on that. So we want to build an internal tool to help our sales reps. And maybe eventually, if it gets really, really good, we could even make it, put it on our website for people to use and play with as well or something. But that, again, it has a lot of contextual data basically about our floor plan library. And people are able to go in and just like I said, hey, I've got a customer here looking for 3 bedrooms, 2 bath with a large back porch, and their budget is $300,000. They already own their land outright, and the site work looks pretty cheap. What floor plans would you recommend? And it'll say, check these 3 out. So that's like an example where we're trying to deploy a custom GPT it's really just, GPT-4 with a few files uploaded to give it context.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the technology team works in Cursor significantly. And in Cursor, not to get on a whole side tangent, and then just not. Like in Cursor, your repo is your context, kind of. I mean, you can put some stuff in it, but for the most part, your repo is your context. And then, an AI-enabled automation may have some more clearly defined steps, right? So an AI automation might be, say, we have a certain Slack channel, and when you send a message in that Slack channel, it kicks off a Zapier workflow that goes and takes a couple of steps, and then eventually, based on the results of those steps, it goes to a large language model to say, hey, I received a Slack message that said I wanted to have a post on Instagram about this address. I looked the address up in HubSpot, and I found out all that I could find out about what's going on there, the floor plan, the square footage, the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the amenities in the neighborhood, so on and so forth. And then I took all that data that you sent in the Slack message, and I also took the response from HubSpot's API, and I gave it all to an LLM, and I asked it to write me a caption for social media. And then once I got that back from the LLM, I replied to the Slack channel with that message. So that would be what I would call like an AI-enabled automation. There's 3 to 5 steps in that short one that I just explained. One of them is an API call to a large language model, but the others are very clearly defined. We're not just giving the model free reign to go and do whatever it thinks or figures out.
Yep. No, that's cool. You guys seem like you're just on the cutting edge, like I mentioned at the beginning, which is so cool. And
Yeah.
I have so many other questions. I'd be curious to get your perspective on a theory of mine.
Yeah.
And we both have a background in BI.
Yeah.
And my sense is that there's a lot of space to improve, like translating data into a way that people can digest. Because in my experience with BI, sometimes you build these awesome dashboards and people still don't use it or don't look at it. And I think one of the reasons, my theory is that like they just don't like speak that language. It's like hard for them to make that translation of like, oh, this data is telling me something that actually means take this action or change how I'm thinking about it, where there might be some opportunity there for some LLM to help you, like you said, consolidate the context and distribute that information.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear if you explored anything in that area or what you think about that.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting, you hear a lot of buzz nowadays about tools like Palantir, right? I think that can come in and do a lot of what you're talking about. And for those of you that don't know about Palantir, the quickest way to wrap your head around it if you work in the data and BI space is to just say it is a knowledge graph sitting on top of your dispersed systems. That is really what Palantir is. But what that does is it allows Palantir as a knowledge graph to define the relationships between all of your dispersed data systems. And then that is basically the essential context that you then provide back to like a large language model. So BC Stone, like you said, we like to be on the cutting edge. So we've got a demo with Palantir for next week. It's really hard to schedule a demo. We've been working on getting in with them for about 4 to 6 weeks now. They are, one of the few businesses in the world that has the opposite of a marketing problem. You go to them and you're like, I want to give you money, and they're like, well, how much? And you're like, a lot, and they're like, a lot of people want to give us a lot of money. We need more information, and you're like, seriously? It's like, but anyways, long story short, it's really hard to even get it on their sales team's calendar. But we've got a demo coming up next week. We're really excited and enthusiastic about it, and curious to see what comes from it. But I do think there's going to be some major disruptions in the data space. For me, I think, for example, one of the things, we both have a Domo background, one of the things Domo prided itself on, especially in the very early days, was embedded analytics. I think that's toast. If you're a developer, you already have a dev team and you're building a software product and you need an embedded dashboard, you can build those from scratch now. AI is really good at it. I don't even think you would save time at this point to, for the most part, there's a compelling argument to be made now, and again, maybe literally today, yes, but 3 years from now, you're going to be able to go to a model and say, this is the dashboard I want, I want these things to be filters, and it's literally going to do it like this, and I think you're going to get that type of technology integrated with drag and drop into some stuff, and it's just going to become, there's no point, so I think, in my opinion, embedded analytics, that's going to die. I would not continue to invest in that product line if I was a BI company. I think there's going to be some players, the problem with just letting a large language model run wild against your data set is that it will hallucinate. It really doesn't produce the greatest results. And there are industry-specific tools that are coming out that are able to kind of basically put a layer between responses, where it basically is taking your voice, and rather than going and searching the data directly, it takes your voice and converts it into a query. Then it queries the data, then it gets the results, then it kind of tries to answer based on the results of the query. I think stuff like that's going to be very valuable. I know for Domo there's an application, I'm probably going to say this wrong, I think it's called Pranama Shift, maybe. I probably got this wrong. But it does something similar to this, and it was, it was here before. Before OpenAI originally launched GPT-3 and it all went hog wild, they were already doing this. So, I think that people in the space know there has to be some better way to kind of narrow down the data, but it's very difficult, and I think, we take for example, we tried to add that query step to what I'm talking about for our plan picker, right? But what we ran into was, you ask for a large back porch and the plan is described as having a big back porch, and it doesn't pick up big back porch. It only was looking for large back porch. And so you're like, well, it's not really working right. Back to the drawing board, And so for that one, we ended up moving away from having the query in the middle. But I think there's opportunity for that, at least. I think that's one option for that. But I think getting from a large language model to a business insight is easier. It sounds easier than it is, is my personal opinion. I don't think that BI is going to die overnight. But I do think, for example, that there will be some major changes. I do think things like embedded analytics may be in for, a tough run here. Because, again, if you're, sure, some people are embedding dozens of dashboards, and maybe they still have a use case to have embedded analytics at that scale. But if you're trying to put one dashboard as a landing page that's the home of something, you don't need embedded analytics anymore. You don't need it anymore. Just build it yourself from scratch. It's not hard. So.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. I think that idea about the query in the middle is is interesting. And
Yeah.
there's lots of ways to look at this problem, so it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But Carter, my last question, and for you is, what are some of your, Bcamp's an educational institution, so I'm curious to hear, like, what are some of your best or worst experiences from your own education?
Yeah, so I am, you know, not your straight A student. I, for context, am the bottom graduate in my class at university in chemical engineering. Um, Along the way, I found some additional passions, and I am a huge boot camp advocate, actually. So some people may or may not know about me. I've done 2 boot camps myself in order to enable me to kind of transition into my current role from, again, having traditional training and background in chemical engineering. But I've gone to a boot camp for web development. It was a 6-month boot camp that Vanderbilt hosted. And I've also done a boot camp for data science through University of Chicago as well. So my experience and my opinion is cut the fluff, learn some hard skills, and figure out how to talk to people so that you can apply those hard skills, and you probably go pretty far. That's been my lived experience, and yeah, that would be my recommendation. Learn some hard skills and figure out how to talk about them.
I love it. I love that experience. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you, Carter. And yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for being on the show.
absolutely. Thanks for having me, Richard.